Hey Self. So I've been researching a bunch of things related to conservative thinking and liberal thinking, specifically articles that are looking at how people who tend to vote liberal act and think, and people who tend to vote conservative act and think. And I've been doing this because I've been trying to be able to improve my communication with people who are more conservative, because I'm more of a liberal-leaning person. And it'll also help me be able to learn better from people who are more conservative, and also understand where I am and how I think and why I think that way. One of the studies that I ran into was about identifying fake headlines, and the process went like this. People were given a fake headline and then would judge whether or not the headline was real or fake. This was really interesting because people who were more liberal-leaning in their voting were actually very effective at figuring out what's a fake headline. They were able to find it out if it was something that supported their beliefs. In fact, they were even better at finding out things that supported their beliefs than finding out headlines that didn't support their beliefs. So if it was a conservative style headline and it was ridiculous, they were not quite as skilled at identifying that as they were when it was a ridiculous liberal-leaning headline. Now, alternatively, if you were conservative-leaning, you were actually not as good as the liberal-leaning in identifying these various headlines. And one of the reasons why this is what they were calling intuition thinking. So this reminds me of what is known as type 1 and type 2 thinking, which I'll put up a link just right there for you to check it out. Basically a whole video I did on the concept of type 1, type 2 thinking that a very liberal news network made a mistake about, and you'll see. Point being, intuition thinking is the feeling where you make a decision quickly. It's kind of like you react and you're like, oh, this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer. Analytical thinking is the one where you think about it a longer period of time. And it's something that is a skill that you learn. It's not like someone was more smart or more dumb in this situation. It was that someone had the skill set that they were taught to take a moment to analyze rather than to intuit the answer to the question. People who stop and smell the flowers, like that's a skill where you learn to take a moment and admire your surroundings. That's something that was taught. Analytical thinking is something that is hard to do, and something has to be taught to get the person to trigger the analytical thinking. It didn't matter if it was a liberal headline or a conservative headline, the people who thought less about the thing, intuiting more, were going to identify liberal headlines as right even when they were more ridiculous. So it was less about partisanship. It wasn't about, oh, I'm supporting Republican or I'm supporting Democrat. It was about the person not thinking as hard as the person who was thinking more analytically. So this is a fascinating situation because what I can do to take this is, it kind of reminds me of Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is this gentleman, and he talks to people in the KKK. And he has removed many people from the KKK by talking with them. So if you think about it from the perspective that a conservative-minded person is someone who isn't really thinking as much, just not as hard, Daryl Davis's comment, which is that,
so at the age of 10, I formed a question in my mind. That question was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
How could you hate me if you don't even know me? Is his idea. Well, that would basically instill an example of thinking in a person. Well, it's a lot harder to be racist against someone who's just, you know them, right? So that's one of those things where this article kind of supports that same concept, where it's not that people are partisanship in any particular way, but it's that they haven't been taught the particular, like, hey, you should use an analytical mindset for this. And before I see someone being like, oh, this is, conservatives aren't as smart or something like that. No. It is a mindset that you have to be in. And it's something where human beings, as shouting out that video again, human beings are in type 1 thinking all the time, which is the intuition thinking. Analytical thinking is something that we have to put ourselves into, and it's a skill set that you learn to do. For whatever reason, more liberal-leaning people tend to have that skill set. You also find that more liberal-leaning people have gone to college, so it's possible that it's something that's learned by doing academia. I don't know, it's an idea. Thought it was really interesting. For me, when I'm talking to people in the future, what it basically means is if someone disagrees with me and they're more conservative leaning, it might be simply because they haven't really thought through their argument. So if I'm just gonna listen to the argument and kind of ask questions and get the person to explain, well, if they realize that they're like, well, I haven't really thought about it very intently, and you give the person I'm not mad at you, person, if you disagree with your own argument when you're halfway into it. I think that's something that might make it easier to have that conversation. Just the person didn't think about it as hard. That's fine. I can talk with that.